Terry Blackhawk to the stage to introduce Ms. Long Magic.
And you are in for a treat because you are going to hear some fine poetry from a monumental mother who has mothered many, many people and brought many voices into the world. Thank you.
Well, these storytellers are a hard act to follow, a very hard act. I am not a storyteller, I'm a poet, and I'm going to read two poems that I wrote about my mother, and then an excerpt from my autobiography, Pilgrim Journey. Twice a Child, for my mother at 90. I think she was on the verge of Alzheimer's. She was beginning to forget a lot of things, and she would forget the names of relatives. And once, when I was getting ready to put her to bed, she got down on her knees and crawled, forgetting, I think, that she could have walked up the steps herself. Twice a Child. Butterflies fan fragile, filmy wings. In the darkening forest I lead her through, holding her hand, guiding her trembling footsteps, buttoning her memory as I used to dress my dolls when she was mother and I was child. Now, overhanging leaves filter fading gold through shadow to the damp and slippery ground beneath as she drifts through the twilight of a fairy tale whose characters' names she has forgotten. And I can only guess what distant bells she hears tolling at the top of a hill she climbs on all fours. I grew up during the Depression. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and keeping house in those days was very difficult because there were never any of the modern conveniences that we have now. And when the day came to an end, she was really, really tired. My father was a prominent minister, and he was always in the limelight. And I wanted to be like him. I didn't want to be a person who was going through all of that drudgery. So I call this poem Reluctant Light. And I always say it took me 70 years to write it, or to be in the frame of mind to write it. Mother, I didn't mean to slight you, but it wasn't you that I adored. You hid your energy in shadows, and I was dazzled by the sun. I idolized the one whose voice soared to prophetic heights, whose words rejuvenated epics of the ages. Some fine June Sundays, slender and magnificent in morning coat, he would electrify the pulpit with eloquent pronouncements of doom and glory so divine the very gates of heaven seemed to part, bathing the atmosphere in crystal light. Seeking his favor, I rehearsed raising my hand like his in benediction, earning the childhood name of preacher, shortened in time to preach. You gave us daily sustenance, but there was never a choir's fanfare or the soul beat of the mighty to grant applause. You baked the bread for which we seldom thanked you, canned pears for winter, and mended depression-weary clothes, scrubbing sheets on a washboard, humming hymns to lift your sagging spirit, and cultivating beauty in endless flower pots. The summer when he toured the streets of ancient Palestine and Rome, You consoled yourself by painting pictures of the Appian Way, using the kitchen table for an easel. You coached me with my homework, rejoiced in my small triumphs, and prepared me to confront the enemy, tapping your umbrella against my fifth-grade teacher's desk to punctuate your firm demand for justice. I didn't recognize your subtle power that led me through blind, airless caves, your quiet elegance that taught me dignity, nor could I know the wind that bore him high into the sunlight, emanated from your breath. I didn't want your journey, rebelled against your sober ways, but I have walked through my own shadows and, like you, transcended glitter. I have learned that I am source and substance of a different kind of light. Now when they say I look like you and tell me that I have deepened to your wisdom, softened to your easy grace, I claim my place with honor in that court of dusky queens whose strength and beauty invented sons that others only borrow. And Mother, I am glad to be your child. This is an excerpt about my mother from Pilgrim Journey, my autobiography. Although Mama's formal education was limited to 3 years in normal school, she was a very intelligent and wise woman and had a lot of common sense. She and Dad shared the same values, and she was the ideal minister's wife. She was friendly and outgoing with everyone and completely absorbed in the work of the church. I was inclined to be introverted and didn't speak to people as enthusiastically as she thought I should. She reminded me, "These people are your bread and butter. Speak to them as if you mean it." She impressed on me that nobody was any better than anybody else. Everybody was just as good as I was, and I needed to show them respect, no matter who they were and what they did or didn't have. Many words of wisdom came from my mother's mouth, sometimes disguised in the homey and picturesque language of her native South, sometimes crouched in cryptic imagery that took me years to figure out. I sometimes heard her say, "If you have to tell somebody who you aren't as important as you think." At other times, she'd say of someone, "Self-praise is half scandalous." Another expression she used was, "Fools' names, like fools' faces, are often seen in public places." Perhaps I had been denied permission to go somewhere. I assured her just everybody in the whole world would be, and if I couldn't go, I would be extremely deprived. Or maybe one of us would indicate how impressed we were by huge crowds that witnessed the performance of some popular entertainer and the amount of applause and money he or she had received. When she repeated this rhyme, she certainly didn't mean that only fools made public appearances and all the right-minded people lived in modest seclusion. I heard her repeat this phrase in so many different contexts that I finally understood what she meant. She was teaching me the distinction between notoriety and renown, between glittering popularity and true worth. Transitory popular acclaim was not as good as lasting achievement. Character was more important than reputation. She was instilling in me an understanding that fame with neither substance nor responsibility is unworthy of emulation, and that it is more honorable to make worthwhile contributions in the quiet shadows than to make a big splash in the glare of public approval. I learned from her the unimportance of material things and how to make do with little. She had little social life outside the church. She always looked nice but seldom bought new clothes. The only fur coat she ever owned was one that her best friend was discarding when she bought a new one. Church members often gave her clothing or other objects, and she always thanked them with enthusiasm, never letting on that she didn't like or couldn't use them. She appreciated their thoughtfulness. You have to take what you don't want to get what you do want, she'd say. We were taught respect for our elders. If we called an adult by her first name, it was always preceded by Miss, and we always responded to a question with yes, sir, or no, ma'am. If we didn't understand a question Dad asked, we didn't ask what, it was sir. My mother taught me dignity and morality, but she also taught me what altruism is. She was not unique in this way. Most mothers would sacrifice everything for the sake of their children. That is the nature of motherhood, but not all mothers possess this quality. Once during my teens, when I was suffering from a severe case of menstrual cramps, she went to the local drugstore and purchased a small bottle of whiskey to mix with some other ingredients. This was an old-fashioned remedy that she knew would offer me immediate relief. Since alcohol was not allowed in our house, this defiant act to relieve my pain is an example of how far she, a respected preacher's wife, would go for her child's comfort. I idolized my father so much that it took me many decades to fully appreciate my mother and her sacrifices. Now when I think of her, the words of a song whose source I don't know come back to me. One bright and guiding light that taught me wrong from right, I found in my mother's eyes. Those baby tales she told of streets all paved with gold, I found in my mother's eyes. Just like the wandering sparrow, one lonely soul, I walked the straight and narrow to reach my goal. God's gift sent from above, one real unselfish love, I found in my mother's eyes. Of all the blessings I have received throughout my life, I consider the good Christian parents I had the most important one by far. They taught me by example and word what honor and integrity are and shaped my life. When my mother died, I had inscribed on her headstone, one real unselfish love.
Ms. Naomi Long Madgett, our treasure.